What's up guys, BltzZ here today bringing you another video. In today's video, I want to talk about a huge topic from last week, Final Fantasy IX Remake. When you think about remake, for many, the most recent and popular one that comes to mind is Final Fantasy VII Remake. For years, this game was wanted by fans, and Square Enix just trolled people at every step, saying they were not focusing on remaking it at least until the time is right. Then after 3 lackluster main entries into the Final Fantasy series with 12, 13 series, and 15, I guess they figured the time was finally right. And then they hit the panic button and brought us all that sweet information we were dying to hear. Final Fantasy VII Remake is being remade. And the world collectively lost their shit. Now granted, it still did take a while after being announced in 2015 and not releasing until 2020. You know, with development hell and scrapping the project to start over. It's been long known information that they would be doing the Final Fantasy VII Remake in parts. This was to expand the world further than they could before. And they wanted to include more of the compilation aspects of the Final Fantasy VII lore to create a massive universe for the world of FF7. Now, we don't know exactly how far they will take that, but it's a crazy smart business move if you ask me, because anything with Final Fantasy VII's name on it just sells like crazy nowadays. Look, they even have a battle royale coming soon, if you don't believe me, which I was memeing very hard, but then ironically, I ended up loving it. I can't wait for the first soldier to drop. Hopefully it's pretty soon and we can start making videos on that. Now, whether or not you loved or hated the remake, when it comes down to the hyper-realistic graphics of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the combat customizability, PS2 level hallway design, character fan service, and lovable dialogue with great casting choices are big identities of that game's release. You know, it got me thinking, and I wanted to talk about this and hear what you guys think about it in the comments below. If we're getting Final Fantasy IX Remake soon, what will the game look like? What would it play like? Since it's not as popular or a household name like Final Fantasy VII, will newcomers still play it? Tons of questions I have and I want to talk about it, so let's get into this video, guys. When it comes to the graphics, I don't think the hyper-realistic look of what Final Fantasy VII Remake has would work in the world of Final Fantasy IX. It definitely can work in the worlds of Final Fantasy VIII and VI for sure, but the character designs of Final Fantasy IX might come off a bit out of place. And by the way, for those asking, this is not completely confirmed, but the reason I think there is no Final Fantasy VIII Remake information or rumors is because Final Fantasy VIII's entire development team are the same people working on Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't see them working on that until they are done, or who even knows if they will be doing it in the first place. Just wanted to clarify to you guys that very well could be the case, or at least those are my thoughts on it. Square took Final Fantasy VII Remake back from CyberConnect 2 to bring it back in-house because they wanted to have the original developers and creators working on it, which was a much better decision than entrusting another company to do it in the first place, Square. That's not saying another company wouldn't have done a better job or a good job per se, but ultimately I do like how Remake 7 turned out, so it seems like it was a good decision. When it comes to Final Fantasy IX's graphics though, I think the style that best suits it could very well be the Kingdom Hearts 3 style and even the Dragon Quest style. A blend between two of those graphically I think would work very well with Final Fantasy IX's characters, world terrain, and just overall lore, and it's perfectly fine by me. What other games do you think could do the Final Fantasy IX world justice? Let me know in the comments below. And when it comes to the development team that could work on Final Fantasy IX, that I have zero ideas on right now. I mean, their original team is spread out right now, I believe, or no longer working with Square Enix. Sakaguchi is no longer with Square, we know that. And I wonder if Forever Entertainment really would be the ones taking over it for them. With 7, I understand why they took it back. I mean, it's their most popular game the entire company has ever created. But with Final Fantasy IX, I don't think it would be in a bad position to let another company work on it, seeing as how there are less things to mess up with it, if that makes any sense. I just don't see Final Fantasy IX being an episodic or part-to-part release like Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be. Yes, it was a 4-disc game, but the story and lore of the world does not really have a compilation, nor was it ever expanded. A one-for-one remake I think works fine for them given the fact that the budget would be smaller than a Final Fantasy VII game. Another aspect about Final Fantasy IX that has me thinking is the combat system. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, they went more towards an action RPG style of combat, which I mean, as you guys know from my main content and tons of guides for Remake, how exactly I feel about it. I fucking love it. And while I would love to see it for Final Fantasy IX's Remake, I can't help but think a turn-based style would work better for Final Fantasy IX. Like, Final Fantasy VII is a 3-team RPG, whereas Final Fantasy IX is a 4-team RPG. Switching between 4 teammates can work just fine with games like Tales of Arise, but their system is a little bit different. For action RPGs with remake system, I don't exactly see how it could work. It also very well could be broken unless many mechanics are completely different. I mean, 4 characters versus 3, there are tons and tons of different times in remake where if I had 4 characters running around the field, it would be crazy different, right? Right, Red 13? Tell them! But besides that, I think Square should take a shot at going back to turn-based and seeing what other unique systems they can come up with or blend together. Lots of games like Persona 5 and Dragon Quest XI still use turn-based systems and are still loved by many fans. The appeal for a company to go with action RPG is also to broaden the fan base, because turn-based RPGs are often found boring by most newcomers. Whereas Final Fantasy VII Remake had possibly the most newcomers to a series I have ever seen, and majority of them absolutely love the new system and the game so much. It's tricky when you think about what they'll do. Whichever route they decide to go with, I definitely will still play it, but I do hope it stays turn-based and adds more to the gameplay we could love. They don't have a materia system, but their ability learning aspect is something I think they could toy around with. What do you guys think? Now, when it comes to the popularity aspect of Final Fantasy IX, and you look at the actual metadata, you'll see that only 43.7% of people that watch and love these videos are currently subscribed. Guys, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on more Final Fantasy news we got coming for you all. We also started streaming on Twitch, and we're almost at 700 followers. Follow us there so you don't miss any aspect of our content and are able to be part of that 10,000 subscriber goal giveaway, where when we hit 10,000 combined Twitch subscribers, YouTube and Patreon members, we will be launching the sealed copy giveaway of Final Fantasy VII Original. So one lucky person will win the ultimate collectible. Let's get it, guys. But really, for the popularity of Final Fantasy IX, it obviously does not have that pull that the name Final Fantasy VII has. I mean, everyone and their dog knows who Cloud or Sephiroth is, especially if you're a gamer. The Buster Sword is recognizable as hell, and Tifa is very well known for having 2 giant red materias in her eyes and a big personality of a punch woman. It's hella mainstream, and there's no other way to say it, but I still love Final Fantasy VII. It's a good game. Just a lot of people like it too. Nothing wrong with that. So with Final Fantasy IX, you can imagine that the budget would not be as big as a Final Fantasy VII game, but with that, they can still create a unique game that everyone and new fans would love. And as I said before, tons of new fans finally got a chance to play Final Fantasy VII Remake for the very first time, and you know what they did? They ended up loving the game so much that many of them bought the original Final Fantasy VII, since it's available digitally everywhere at this point, and people loved that original game too. And because of that, they're now fans of turn-based RPGs. With that being said, those same fans could very well see that Square Enix is releasing another remake titled Final Fantasy IX and say to themselves, hey, maybe we should try this out. And there we go. Final Fantasy IX's interest and success could piggyback off of what Final Fantasy VII Remake paved the way for last year in terms of marketing and having lots of other people recognize the game's name at least. Now, like I said, Final Fantasy IX isn't a household name that people will recognize immediately like they do with 7, but it's also at this moment available everywhere too, from PC, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, all the PlayStations. Once Final Fantasy IX Remake comes out, fans will have access to the original Final Fantasy IX release to enjoy everywhere and anywhere that they want. I don't think the sales will be an issue, and the amount made from Final Fantasy IX would definitely cover their budget and more on top of that. And that wraps it up for this video, guys. Final Fantasy IX has a lot of fans, and they're about to gain a whole bunch more too. It's the one Final Fantasy I don't see a lot of fans arguing over. Everyone collectively likes various things about 9, and for many, it's their favorite within the series, which is pretty damn cool. I played 9 myself after I played 7 and 8, and I enjoyed it a lot too when I was younger. I think I played it around the time where it just released as well. I will be playing it again very soon on our stream, so make sure you guys follow us on Twitch and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on it. Final Fantasy XIV, we have to start setting up a fan base for. I mean, I've been playing that game consistently since 2015, and I see there are tons of fans for Final Fantasy XIV now, so I want to start making content for you guys to enjoy because, you know, your boy got some really cool exclusive things he can show you when it comes to the rotations and shit, you know what I'm saying? Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new. More Final Fantasy videos are coming your way and you won't want to miss them. My name is BltzZ, and thanks for watching.